I'd like to introduce photographer Magda Indigo, who's kindly agreed to do an interview. And thank you very much for that, Magda.
Welcome.
I'd like to ask you a few questions which I hope people will find interesting. I know there are a lot of people curious about your work and how you see the world and everything. So without further ado, when did you start taking pictures?
From a very young age. I mean, I grew up, my grandparents had a camera and wherever they went, they took it with them. Same thing for my parents, so as far as I can remember. And the great thing was they let me use it, no matter how tiny I was.
Can you tell us what type of photography is your favorite genre?
I am best known for my flower work. However, I do not consider myself just a flower photographer. I think if you are a good photographer, you can photograph anything. But when you talk about preference, yes, I do like photographing flowers, obviously, but I also enjoy photographing people.
Another thing that people are often interested in is what equipment you use.
When you have photographed for that many years, obviously I come from the old school film, and because of that I have used an unbelievable amount of different cameras, from film, like I said, to now the digital era. One of the cameras that I have preferred was the Nikon F4. For a long time I had two, and they were my favorite cameras. Then there was the Hasselblad, and now of course we are in the digital era, and there I have grown with the different cameras.
And what lenses are your favorite lenses, Magda?
I like zoom lenses. For my flower work I use a fixed lens, the 60mm, which is my macro lens, and on the Hasselblads it's Carl Zeiss 80mm. But overall, yes, I do like a zoom lens because it gives me a range from nowadays very wide, which sometimes you need in certain situations, but as I am so fond of details, to tell a whole story, it is good that you can zoom in to really hands or whatever you want to have the detail of.
Yeah. Okay. And can you tell us a bit more about where the idea came from to photograph on a black background?
Well, I have often said it. I think if you are a creative, you are not just creative in one field, but in different fields. Now, one of my backgrounds is that I used to paint with oils, with watercolors, and also do pastels with the soft pastels. I was born in Belgium, in Flanders, in Brugge, and there, when you drive through the countryside, you used to be able to see the old farmhouses, and what it was they would whitewash the walls, but on the bottom there would be a black tarred strip about almost a meter high, and that was against moisture, that was also against insects and all kinds of things. But the farmer's wife would usually love flowers, and what would she do? Somewhere around the house, against the black, there would be a flower border. Now, I had often seen that, and one day I decided that I was going to make an oil painting of flowers, and I made it a black background because that's the image that I had in front of me, and I can show you one of the paintings that I do have with the black background. And that was painted in 1989. And that's actually where the idea, they just popped out the colors, and from that moment on in photography, because I did go on to more photography later, and that's when I decided that since I wanted to know more about what light did in photography, I started to concentrate on taking photographs in the studio with different lights, different lenses, different cameras, and flowers are a great subject because of all the different colors, the different textures, the different shapes, and because I had such a vast knowledge by then of flowers, although I was raised in the city, I was a real city girl, but I always had an interest. I've always loved flowers, and I started to grow them myself, and that's actually where it then came from. To me it seemed the obvious choice to learn about light. And also what I do like about flowers is they each have their own character. Well, that's what I see in it.
What advice can you give to new photographers, novice photographers and amateurs who are starting out and wanting to learn more about photography? Do you have any pearls of wisdom to share with them?
Yes, I do. One, enjoy your photography. It will come through in your images. If you do something that you enjoy, it always shows. And also, don't be afraid to try out things, new lighting, new reflectors, whatever they are. It doesn't have to be expensive. I've always said that. I mean, everything reflects, from a plain sheet of white paper to silver aluminium foil. Anything will reflect light there and put an accent there where you want it. And you get better and better at it. That's how I learned. Don't be afraid to experiment, experiment, experiment.
Right, Magda, what characteristic do you think you need to have to be a successful photographer?
You have to love what you do. I've said that before. You have to be very determined, not afraid to put in the hours, because good photography is often time-consuming, especially in the flower photography. That's what I'm talking about here. Plus, they often mention the word passion. Now, what I call passion is an absolute madness that you must have. And they like to call it passion. And if that's it, well, then I have got it, I'm sure.
And could you tell us what your favorite flower is?
That is a difficult one. I like all flowers, really. I've just finished a series of the humble dandelion, so from what is considered a weed to the most beautiful orchids. Yes, I like all flowers. I don't have a particular favorite.
And what's your dream in terms of your photography?
I have achieved most of my dreams. I'm fortunate to say. They've sold all over the world. However, I have one dream, and that is that I would love to have an exhibition with about 10 images, but really large, 10 a meter on a meter. You know, that they really, yes, that is one of my dreams that I have left.
Could you tell us how you managed to get such beautiful, clear, sharp images on the black backgrounds? Your lighting is absolutely exquisite, and there's a real sense of quality that comes out of every piece that you make.
Each flower is different, so each flower demands a different lighting. I have no magic formula that says, look, you plonk down flower after flower and they're all there. It doesn't work like that. I see a flower, the flower, I've often said it, I don't talk to my flowers, I just gladly listen to them. It is a fact. I buy flowers, or I go into the garden, I see a flower that I like or that is photogenic, and I bring it into the studio, and usually, yeah, it's the flowers that tell me what or how I am going to photograph it. I can tell you that I don't use flash. I don't like the effect that flash has, so it is continuous light, but then also small other light sources, and that can be anything from a torch to you name it.
Magda, could you tell us what any sources of inspiration that you have?
I've always been, from a very young age, worried that I would be influenced. I didn't want to compromise my own vision. So although there are many photographers and I like their work and I can appreciate it, I try not to look too much, too closely, just in case that I would, be influenced by it, and yeah, that, no. I want to have my own style and keep it that way.
Magda, could you tell us about any of your favorite images, and perhaps share some stories about how you made the image, or what that image particularly means to you?
Well, a couple of years ago, I had two beautifully trained dancers, a man and a woman, and we had them in our studio, and there was, again, I had a preconceived idea, because that's usually how it works for me. I get my best ideas after midnight. I'm a night person. So we had them in the studio, and I wanted to try out some things, like how do you get movement into an image? And you do that with strobe lighting. Now, many nowadays call themselves strobists because they use flash, but it's not just using flash that makes you a strobist. Strobe photography is actually different flashes going off at the same time, and with the small intervals, so the subject, the dancers in that case, they did a movement, either a jump, and as the flash goes off, the camera is open, and it registers the different stages of the movement. And that to me was fascinating, because photography to me is such a static medium, and I wanted movement in it, and that is a series that I really have enjoyed, and I still love those images very much. I did some in black and white because it was still the days of film, and I did some in color, which I love tremendously. Yes.
Thank you.
I hope that answers your question.
It certainly does, yes.
Obviously, they are not the only photos that I like, but when you just asked me the questions, those were the images that just came in front of my eyes.
Very interesting that they weren't your flowers, which are probably your most well-known images.
My flowers, like I've said, they started out as a light exercise. I wanted to know, photography is all about light, and I wanted to know what light does. And because of the training that I had had in art history and painting and all of that, I knew about composition, and I also knew exactly where there is a shadow. And there also comes in the vast knowledge that I have of flowers. I know where there can be a shadow and where not.
That's great, very helpful. Magda, thank you very much for taking the time to do this interview with me. Really appreciate it, and hopefully we'll be able to do another interview in the future again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.